Set, go!
And away we go. Good start, both crews.
I think Oxford slightly higher rating there, aren't they? Cambridge a little steadier off.
Early advantage is with Tim Foster's crew. Certainly went off at a high rate.
They certainly jumped onto that first stroke very quickly. Just now looking at Tim Foster, long sweeping stroke right from the start.
I think the crews are converging a little here. The stay boats are quite wide off the start. We're getting the first warnings.
The umpire shouting the warnings. That always happens. It's considered that there's just about enough stream for two boats. A little more, they will fight for the water, and it's vital. And Oxford have the advantage in the early stages, but the bend will start to come into Cambridge's advantage.
And I think Cambridge Cox is trying to push the Oxford boat into there's a bay along these buoys, you can see it here. He'll want to push as close over towards the black buoy as he can, so he can push Oxford wide as they come towards that first bend.
The problem he has is the usual way to try to steer Middlesex is to hold the outside crew out as long as you can and then turn it suddenly. If you're not in the lead, it's obviously a lot harder to do that.
Come past the boathouses, approaching Beverley Brook. Fulham Football Ground will come up on the right-hand side.
Both crews were at 37. Cambridge now dropped to 34, and they seem to have crept back. It's about a canvas between the crews at the moment.
And 34 is really their comfortable rhythm. And if both crews can get into their rhythm, we're going to have a cracking contest.
This is a crucial period of the race because this is where both crews will settle down into their race rhythms. They'll be aiming to go at this sort of rate for the next 15 minutes if they have to. The crew that gets the faster boat speed here will probably go on to win.
Both crews now at 34. You can see the poppleness of the waves. It's bouncing them around a bit. The oars are bouncing off the waves. Doesn't help the rhythm. You want to try and keep it clear. But they're now coming towards the critical first bend.
And they're turning more into the northwesterly wind up to Fulham Football Ground.
The umpire's warning Cambridge all the time here. You can hear him shouting.
Kevin Whyman trying to hold Oxford out, and as a result the blades are in danger of interlocking very, very close indeed. But this is crucial because this race is a test of stamina, but at the start, Chris, is a sprint.
It's a sprint. They have to try and hold the advantage here, but every time that Kevin Whyman uses the rudder, it will slow the boat down, but he's pushing very hard. There's some really aggressive steering going on here.
You remember last year there was so much effort from Oxford, who were then on the Middlesex station, and in the end it cost them when Cambridge found the push just coming up to Hammersmith.
I think they're probably about halfway around the bend here. Cambridge have taken maybe six feet. They're just starting to get a bit of an advantage. What we'll have to wait and see is whether that's because of the bend or whether it's because they're actually rowing more efficiently now.
Certainly a good contest over the first mile, and the danger of the neurosurgeon losing his voice is becoming increasingly...
They're very, very close now. There really is a danger of quite a serious crash. Cambridge are coming at them again. They're trying to push them wide as they can. Right round the outside of that bend. They need every advantage as they can as they come away from the milepost and go up towards Harrods. Cambridge are nose ahead, but that's more to do with the bend, I think, than their boat speed.
The problem is once the crews are this close, when the Cambridge Cox uses his rudder, that then pushes the stern of his boat towards Oxford, so that they're inevitably going to get even closer.
Test 2 for Alex Greaney, the Oxford Cox, who, when he was coxing ISIS, never really had any problems because, poor fellow, he could always see the other crew disappearing. But not today. This is a very, very good contest as we move up into Crabtree Reach from Fulham Reach, and the umpire still yelling his head off. So close.
The problem is he's walked Cambridge.
Look at that.
He's won Cambridge since the start, so if something does happen, he's going to have no choice but to penalise them. I think as an Oxford person, I'd like to see him giving Oxford a few warnings now.
There, looking on, is Ed Bellamy, the president of Oxford, who competed for ISIS, couldn't get in the blue boat. This is cracking stuff.
Oh, it's cracking stuff. It's what we'd expected from two crews of this quality. Stroke for stroke it is. But obviously neither were prepared to give away. Both looking very relaxed, both well within their rhythms here.
This is a hard time for Oxford. This is where they must get that rhythm back, because they've lost that little bit from the bend. What they must do is maintain the confidence or the rhythm, so the advantage that Cambridge have taken from the bend doesn't cross over.
This is not what the umpire wanted. He wanted 20 feet between the crews, so he said when he was briefing the boxes.
Optimistic, I don't know.
I doubt if at times he's had considerably less than 20 inches.
Cambridge still a nose ahead, perhaps a canvas, but not more. And they now have got the hard work, because they're coming in towards the first part of the Surrey bend. And that really plays its major part from the end of the Harrods Wall, which is coming up in a minute, and then through Hammersmith Bridge.
There we, in fact, are going past the Harrods Depository. And we are 1.25 miles into this 4.25 mile race. And neck and neck as the times on the milepost confirm, both at 3:51. 20 seconds down, or 0.20 down on the record time, which is indicative of the conditions.
These next minutes now are a crucial time, because this is the sort of period, 5 or 6 minutes is the sort of period where crews are used to rowing side by side. But once we go beyond that, it's Cambridge desperately trying to hold on around the outside of this bend now.
They're trying to push Oxford in towards as close into the pier of the bridge as they can. Over the next 2 minutes, Oxford will have approximately a half-length advantage, and Cambridge have got to try and hold on to that. They've got a nose ahead as they come towards Hammersmith, but it's probably no more than that.
They're a sight that every neutral wanted to see. I'm not sure that either of the crews wanted to see, but they are side by side as they shoot Hammersmith Bridge. We have here one of the best races for years. It's lived up to its billing, and it's going to be a question not only of stamina and determination, but which crew manages to best keep its technique.
Yes, they've really got to hold it now, and they're still desperately close. Oxford are pulling away now around that first part of the bend, and Cambridge have got to try and keep their cool. They've got to probably accept that Oxford will go away to, say, a half a length lead, but they must not let them have more. Now's the moment where they've got to dig in deep, because the bend is really coming into its own in Oxford's advantage from now for the next minute and a half.
This is what Alex Greaney will be trying, that the Oxford Cocks will be desperately trying to give some back to the Cambridge Cocks, to try and push him as wide as possible, and then to take the bend suddenly, so that Cambridge shoot off in the other direction. Well, not shoot off.
Cambridge coming back inward again towards the Surrey station and getting very, very close. Hardly stopped talking, the umpire, from the start. 6:55, 6:56, the times at Hammersmith Bridge. Oxford there ahead by a second.
I'm sure that both Oxford is pushing within their rhythm, trying to hold Cambridge. And you can see there as the bend goes away towards your left. If Cambridge can hold on for the next minute, minute and a half, they should be able to then row down the Chiswick Ayers, which is effectively straight. So they've got to dig in now for the next minute and a half.
The problem with this sort of clashing all the way is it's all very well for the Coxes. They think they're doing their bit and they're doing their best to win the race for the crew, but it makes it very hard for the oarsmen, because they have to watch their oars all the time. They have to grip them. There's extra tension coming in.
Yes, there could be a slip at any time, and then you could have someone on their back. You know, we saw that happen when Cambridge rowed against Imperial College, and there was a major crab in the second piece because they clashed. It's a very dangerous strategy. High risk in every way.
If we just look technically at the boats there at the moment, Cambridge just look a little bit sharper in. If you watch can't quite see it now, but I think the Cambridge crew is just covering their oars slightly sharper than the Oxford boat. So the Oxford boat, the oars are just hanging up there a bit. This may indicate that Cambridge are starting to come back into this then.
Very interesting, because we've admired the Cambridge technique over the last 4 years, but by heaven, it's being tested today.
This is the first time we've seen this sort of quality, where two crews on it, but I think Cambridge have actually really held on round that bend, and they seem to have come back on terms. It looks from the helicopter that it isn't more than a third of a length, and now the crews are straight, and Cambridge know that within 3 minutes the bend will start to move towards their favour. They've got to row down the next 2 minutes down the Chiswick Gate. There's then a small bend worth perhaps a quarter, maybe a third of a length maximum to Oxford, and then there's the big bend round to Barnes and home for Cambridge, and they've done really well.
If Cambridge can hang on to that bend, they've got an excellent chance of winning because it's a quite a sharp bend, that last Middlesex bend. Usually it's irrelevant because obviously the crews aren't near each other then.
When did we last see blades so close for so long? They're now going down parallel to the Chiswick-Gate, and it's a time to bite the lip or the fingernails. It's just past 2¼ miles. At the end of it, it's 2½ miles at the end of Chiswick-Gate. The next time we will get will be from the Chiswick steps. Foster looks over to see where Cambridge are. The answer is absolutely level pegging.
And that's the first time I've seen any anxiety really in his face. Clearly he was concerned about his blade being caught behind Story's blade at 7 in the Cambridge crew, because they are just ahead of them. The dangerous position is when you've got your opposition's blades just behind yours, because you can easily get your blade caught in the water and disaster can then fall. But they are still stroke for stroke as they come down towards Chiswick-Gate, and Oxford now have got to make a big effort. I think we're seeing them squeezing on a bit. They've got to try and make the best of this last part of the Surrey Bend.
They're past the Chiswick steps and on we go.
This is really unknown territory for these guys now. I've done one race, I think, where I was this close, this late, and I think it was one of the only times I've ever been rowing, and I thought it might be time to give up and wish I'd never ever started, because this is 10 or 11 minutes of sprinting. A 2,000 metre race, the international races these people do, or the normal regattas, are only 6 or 7 minutes.
And Cambridge push then to try and hold the outside of this last bend. This is the end of the Surrey Bend, and Oxford have not managed to get away from Cambridge. The question now is, what did it cost Cambridge to get round the outside of that Surrey Bend? What can they do now as they surge towards Barnes Bridge? From now onwards, the river turns in their favour.
And Cambridge are inching ahead. Both timed at 10:49 at Chiswick Steps.
And one of the unanswered questions here is about the conditioning of these crews. Cambridge had some problems. We heard about David Cassidy, who was ill early, and James Ball came back to training late. Oxford too, we've heard that they spent less time conditioning in the gym, more time perhaps on the water. So now we'll see what they're made of. Beautiful water, absolutely flat. They're heading down now towards the Barnes Bend.
Cambridge are definitely moving out now. The point about the blade work earlier, I said they're still looking sharper. Oxford are beginning to look a bit ragged now. They're going to know that this bend's coming up, and they're going to have to row all the way around the outside if they're to win.
Well, it takes guts and it takes technique, and at the moment Cambridge are marrying both. There's no doubting the Oxford guts, but their technique and their stamina are now being put to a full test. Very, very little weights training has gone on at Oxford.
Oxford, I think, have just pushed there, just saw the rate go up.
And they were warned at the same time. Now it's their turn to try and push Cambridge close in as they can. The Barnes Bridge bend is a very tricky one for the Coxes because the bridge does not run at right angles to the river, the line of the river. So it's very important that the crews come out to sweep through the bridge, and there could yet be quite a struggle as they come into this bridge. Because at the point of the turn there, Cambridge could gain a quick advantage of about 1/3 of a length.
David Cassidy, Roger Pym in the bow, Alex Story, James Ball, stern pair.
This is, again, a crucial time, but this sort of distance, 2/3 of a length up, 3/4 of a length, if you allow the crew behind to hang on there, the pressure begins to come back on, so Cambridge must push clear.
And they are beginning to look tired now, that Oxford crew. The finishes aren't so well hard out. Up in the bows where there are several relatively young people, the pressure must really be showing now. It's very, very tough. This is quite the greatest race we've seen for many years.
It's also showing on the face there of James Roycroft, but I would say that Tim Foster was also gritting his teeth.
The Cambridge crew don't look in such difficulty, do they? They look a bit more relaxed. I mean, I don't suppose any of them are enjoying it, but
the angle slightly foreshortened there as they come towards Barnes Bridge. This is the view that Cambridge have. That shows the difference between the two crews, and you've got to go back to 1952 for a crew to come wide from the Surrey station and take the victory. It's looking very good for Cambridge as they approach Barnes Bridge.
And I don't say it's impossible, but once you've got clear water, you can see what's happening here, that Cambridge are putting their puddles from their stroke side blades underneath the Oxford boat to make it as uncomfortable for them as they can. But it's going to be a tough old 3 minutes in because there's quite a headwind round this last bend.
It's all about getting it right on the day, and Cambridge once again seem to have done exactly that. All their problems this week, their reported problems this week, I don't think they were anything like as worried about them as one or two would have had us believe.
I think that's right, and they've shown they can produce it again under pressure, and indeed they've excised the voodoo, if that's what it is, of the Middlesex bend. They've shown you can do it, you can maintain the pace and around the bends.
I think Oxford are trying to come back now. They're obviously throwing everything in. They know that with 3 minutes to go, they must go now if they're going to make any impression. There's no point waiting.
Push there by Foster, definite push by Foster, and he's closed just ever so slightly, but the advantage clearly with the light blues. 14.35 for Cambridge, 14.39 for Oxford as they went underneath Barnes Bridge. An advantage of 4 seconds, which is just over the length.
It's visibly more than the length, isn't it? It's about a length and a 2/3 here. Cambridge have responded, I must say, with the sense of home there, it must be very difficult for anyone to get on terms with Cambridge now. They have really showed colossal character, taking the race to Oxford all the way around that Surrey bend. And it looks, the blade work still looks crisp. They seem to be strong still. Oxford are going though. Oxford are pushing everything into it.
The umpire's warning Cambridge to get back to their station, but there's only really a foul if the crews actually clash. So Oxford are hoping maybe if they can hit a Cambridge oar.
What a revealing shake of the head from Ed Bellamy there. Still, the umpire shouts at Cambridge. Well, in the veterans race, there was a clash a good deal earlier than this. It was only over half the distance.
No, I don't think that the umpire can really complain at Cambridge here. They're well clear of Oxford. Only if Oxford move right back on them can he demand that they move back into their water. But Cambridge now begin to respond and put it up. You can see the pain in James's face, though.
But the Cocks could see the finish. Still, the gap is about the same, although Oxford doing everything they can to narrow it. You have to admire both crews here. They've given us a quite fantastic race.
I think Cambridge particularly have done well. I think their strokeman, James Ball, has been under a lot of pressure this week. There's been a lot of stuff in the press about how he hasn't been rowing as well. And I hope he takes a lot of pleasure out of this because he's done really well today, keeping a calm head.
I think that's quite right, Jonny. I think it's been a superbly judged race by them.
Well, all the years we've watched and admired the technique, but there, Kevin Whyman waving his crew home as Cambridge make it 5 in succession. And in many respects, that is their best performance. They had to do it the hard way from the less favoured station. They had to show character, they had to show coolness, and they had to show that their technique was still better than that of the opposition. And by heaven, how they're enjoying the fact that they proved that on this one day.
That's not quite how I feel.
No, I'm sure it isn't, because fortunately, Jonny, neither you nor I have known what it is to lose this race. We can only share with watch those who have. But that was the most amazing race, considering the speed in which they went right at it from the beginning.
I think that's right. Mentally and physically, the Oxford boat are going to be broken now. To be in a race for that long, and then there was a point there where they almost seemed like they were going to win, and then it was taken away.
Yes, I wonder when they knew that they hadn't got quite enough. It must have been probably along Chiswick somewhere where they realised that Cambridge had hung on around that crucial fast bit. So the debate will doubtless continue.
And the winning time for Cambridge, 17 minutes and 38 seconds. A victory by 6 seconds from Oxford, who finished in 17.44.